This screencast is about how to find percent composition. Percent composition is a lot like finding a percent for an exam. It's a percent of the part out of a whole. So let's jump right into it. Percent composition is useful because it's helpful to know the percentage by mass of a particular element in a chemical compound. So to find the percent mass, you're going to use this equation where you take the mass of the element that's in the sample divided by the total mass of the sample times 100. And that gives you the percent of the element that's in the compound. So it's a lot like, as I mentioned before, finding your grade in class. Like if you have a 60%, it means you have 60 parts out of 100, and that's how you get your percent. We're going to find the percent composition for a compound in a similar manner. The mass percentage of an element in a compound is the same regardless of the sample size. It's always the same percent. So a 60% can be a 6 out of 10, or it can be a 60 out of 100. It doesn't matter how large the sample is, the percentage is the same. So here's an example showing you the percent composition of iron 3 oxide and iron 2 oxide. And you could just see that the percentages differ depending on how many of each element are present in the compound. So in the iron 3 oxide, it's 69.9% iron, as opposed to the iron 2 oxide, there's 77.7% iron. So it does have to do with what elements are in the compound, but it also has to do with how many of that element are in the compound. So let's look at an example problem. Find the percentage composition of copper 1 sulfide, and the formula is Cu2S. So we're given the formula for copper 2 sulfide, and we're asked to find the percentage composition. So what we're going to do is, from the formula, we will find the molar mass, and then using that molar mass, we will find the percentage for each element that's in the compound. So on the next slide, I'm going to go through these steps with you. So we're finding the percentage composition for copper 1 sulfide, Cu2S. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is find the molar mass. In our compound, we have 2 atoms of copper, so I take 2 times my atomic mass for copper, which is 63.5 grams. 2 times 63.5 is going to give me 127.0 grams of copper. I do the same thing for my sulfur. I have 1 atom of sulfur in my compound. I multiply that by the atomic mass of sulfur, which is 32.1 grams, and I get a total of 32.1 grams of sulfur. And when I add those together, I'm going to get a total mass of 159.1 grams of copper sulfide. Now, to find my percentages for copper, I'm going to take the mass that's made up of copper, so the 127 grams of copper, I take 127.0 grams, I divide it by the total molar mass of the compound, so the 159.1 grams, I multiply it by 100 to make it a percent, and I get a total percent of 79.8% copper. I followed the same process to calculate my percent of sulfur. I use my mass of just the sulfur, so my 32.1 grams. I divide it by the total mass of the compound, which is 159.1 grams. Multiply it by 100 to make it a percent, and I get a total of 20.2% sulfur. Now, if I want to double check my answer, my percentage is always out of 100. So when I add my percentages together, I should be able to total 100%. So in copper 2 sulfide is always made up of 79.8% copper and 20.2% sulfur. Please make sure you copy this example down into your notes, and if you have any questions, make a note of them and make sure you bring them to class to ask Mrs. Benke.